being flexible is a huge key to all of this, and just realizing there's no one right way. You aren't doing it wrong if you have to change things up and it doesn't look like anybody else's homeschool, because there isn't just one right way to do this.
Hey everyone, this is Yvette Hampton. Welcome back to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. I am here this week with a new guest and I'm so excited. So she's new on the podcast, but so many of you already are familiar with Amy Roberts from Raising Arrows. And this is part of our Homeschooling Through the Years series. We're going to talk about elementary school this week. And I'm so excited to have Amy with me this week to talk about this. And we're going to have a great conversation. But before we get into it, I want to say thank you to our sponsor, BJUPress Homeschool. If you're looking for great homeschool curriculum that will give you all the tools you need to homeschool with success and from a biblical worldview, try BJUPressHomeschool.com. They have all the resources and they will really encourage a love of learning in your kids, and they'll help walk with you every step of the way. So if you've not checked them out yet, check them out at BJUPressHomeschool.com. Well, Amy, welcome to the podcast. I told you before, you have been on my bucket list for a long time to have on the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast, and I'm so glad it finally worked out for you to come. And so welcome. For those who don't know you, introduce yourself and your ministry and all that you do.
Definitely. I am so glad to be here. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me. So I have been married to my high school sweetheart for almost 28 years, and we have 10 children. Our oldest is 26, all the way down to a 7-year-old. And so I have homeschooled everything. And he is in the military. And then I have a blog in my spare time. I do podcasting and YouTube, and then also the blog at raisingarrows.net.
Yeah, you have so much good material. I love getting your emails and reading your blog. You are just full of wisdom and information. And so much of that is because, like you said, you've been through it. You've homeschooled all the grades, you've homeschooled all the ages, you've homeschooled multiple kids. I know you talk a lot about big family homeschooling. And so it's really neat to have someone who's been through it, right? Not someone who's like, well, this is, I think, what it's going to look like. You went to teacher school and you're like, I'm an expert now in teaching.
Right.
No. You have actually lived it out. How many have you graduated so far?
4.
Okay. Yes. Okay. All right. So you've got how many in high school? I'm going to make you think
1.
now.
I know.
Oh, you only have 1 high schooler right now. Wow.
We only have 1.
Okay.
Yeah, there's 5 in our school currently.
Okay.
And so yeah, high school and then junior high, and then I have 3 elementary.
Okay. So much fun. I love that. Well, let's talk first, we're going to talk about elementary, but I want to talk really quickly about kind of large family homeschooling, because that's a question, of course, that we get all the time, is how in the world do you balance all of the kids with all the different grades, especially when you have little ones underfoot? I know that can be really overwhelming. And that's one of the reasons why many people don't homeschool, is because they're like, there's just no way that I can possibly balance all of the kids and teach them all the things that they need to know. So how do you do that in your home?
So it's been a process. It has taken us a while to find our groove with all of that. And thankfully, I started from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was adding children. They weren't all coming home at once, and I was trying to figure that out.
Right.
But we do something called morning time, which I'm sure you've heard of. And that brings us all together at a specific time in the morning. We do specific subjects, and then everybody goes out from there to their independent schoolwork. And that's really been the key, is that I do what I can together, and what I can't do, they do independently. And I have tried to help them learn how to learn independently, how to be responsible for their own work. And they have a certain order that they do things in. And that way, when they leave the morning time, they are specifically working through specific subjects. And I just check on them as I can. I've tried to automate as much as I can. I have classes that they take online. And so just trying to tweak things to make it work for the number of children you have, your circumstances, and it's going to change. You may get a really good groove, and then suddenly you add another baby, or you add a crazy toddler or something like that. It all has to change again. So being flexible is a huge key to all of this, and just realizing there's no one right way. You aren't doing it wrong if you have to change things up and it doesn't look like anybody else's homeschool, because there isn't just one right way to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Being flexible, I think, is so important because, like you said, all the kids are different. So you might have a toddler who's really easy and they can play on their own, but then you might have
Mhm.
another toddler come up after them who is really needy and they always want to be near mom and they always need mommy's attention or somebody's attention. And so kids are just different. Their personalities are different. Their character is different. And so being
Yeah.
flexible, I think, is so key. It's when we put ourselves in that box that we need to teach exactly this way, this curriculum at this exact time, and all of my kids are going to fall into line like
Yes.
they would in a classroom. And then moms are like, "Oh, no, 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 this isn't working. What am I doing wrong?" And
Right.
moms get discouraged by that. So,
Yes, and in public school, the kids just slip through the cracks then.
right.
But in your homeschool, you don't want that to happen. And so being flexible and realizing that there are things you're going to have to change over the years is really key.
Yeah. So, okay, we've talked already about preschool and kindergarten, those really early years.
Okay.
Let's talk about elementary because this is just, it's so much fun. I feel like even now with my girls, I have said with every stage that they're at, like, oh, I love this stage so much. I loved the baby phase. Well, for the most part, I loved the toddler phase. There were some times that were really hard. And then elementary, I loved the elementary years because they're
Yeah.
just so much fun. They're just kind of exploring all the things and there's so many new things to them, but they're also becoming their own people. And so, as you with your kids have transitioned from those preschool and early kindergarten years into more kind of serious, I guess I should say, academics, what has that looked like for your kids and how have you made that transition with them?
Well, one thing I want to say is that elementary is still such a formative time for your children, and you can really lead them to a place where they despise learning and they
Mm,
despise education and school in general, or you can lead them to a place where they learn to love learning.
yeah.
And those elementary years are just so important for not squashing that excitement. We tend to, with preschool and kindergarten, we tend to do all the fun things and keep it fun and light and exciting. And then we hit elementary and we kind of have a freak out moment where we're like, oh no, now we have to do real school.
Yeah.
And so we try to add in, hours worth of seat work for little tiny people who are not at that place where they can sit for hours upon hours.
Yeah.
And so you really have to be careful that you don't suddenly cut off the fun and you don't suddenly send them down a path of really not enjoying school. And so I hesitate to say like now we're at the serious years
Yeah.
because I really don't even think that happens until you're in high school. I
Yep.
I really think you need to spend, those early elementary years and on up into the upper elementary just nurturing the love of learning. And one way that we do that is by not having a lot of like basic subjects. Don't think that everything is essential. Really, in those early years, it's getting them to read, so
Hmm.
your phonics, and it's math, and maybe some handwriting or something like that, science thrown in here and there. But really, even the science and the history and all of that is not essential at that age. And the reason I say that is because phonics and math are sequential learning subjects.
Right.
So you have to consistently do your phonics and your math. And so those are things that day in and day out, you're going to be doing phonics and math, but everything else, those are non essentials. And so if you're just trying to pour all this stuff into your kids and hope that they retain it all, I think you're doing them a disservice and you're going to end up with children who don't like school at all. So keep your basics basic. And then the extra things, they still need to be fun. They still need to be something that you enjoy, your children enjoy. These are opportunities for you to build relationships with your
Hmm.
kids that are going to last into those hard years. And those elementary years are so important. So just don't squash them. That is the big thing. I think parents jump in with both feet
Yeah.
and they end up stepping on their kids in the process.
Right. Because it's scary because society has told us that we have to do all the subjects, we have to do all the things, and they need to do all the worksheets. And
Yes.
my youngest daughter is in seventh. She's actually finishing seventh now, going into eighth grade. And she this past year she was doing a writing curriculum at her co-op, and it was every week they would have worksheets. And I was like, "Do you know the material?" She's like, "Yes." I said, "That I don't care if you don't fill in the blanks. Like, it just doesn't make any difference to me if you already know the material." And she does know it. She's proven to me that she knows it. So I don't feel it necessary, because I would rather her be doing something else, like,
Right.
I don't know, building something or reading or just doing something else creative than taking the time to fill in all of the blanks.
Right. Yes, and they need that margin in
Yeah,
their day.
right.
They need to have space to grow and learn and pursue passions and interests. And if you have filled up every second of their day with seat work,
Right.
they are not going to thrive.
Yeah, yeah. I see that in elementary kids, especially, that behavior problems can really manifest, because they're like, it's almost like they're, boiling, water boiling and ready to just jump out of the pan. Like, they got to get out, they got to move, they have to do
Yes.
something, because their bodies are not created to just sit still for so long. So we'll talk a little bit
Right.
more about that, but first we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Have you tried CTCMath yet with your child? Here's a testimonial from another happy homeschool mom. Amber said, "I'm absolutely thrilled with CTCMath. It's a rare find that I've used with my children for more than 5 years now. I have 6 children using CTCMath, and each child has found it easy to navigate and very applicable. Thank you so much for all that you are doing in providing quality math lessons for my children." If you're looking for a great online math program, visit ctcmath.com. That's ctcmath.com. Are you looking for a homeschool curriculum that goes beyond textbooks and truly engages your children in the joy of learning? Apologia's award-winning curriculum is written by homeschool parents to specifically meet your needs and captivate your students with hands-on activities and experiments that make learning unforgettable. With an easy-to-follow, open-and-go format, Apologia takes the stress out of planning and provides a simple roadmap that can easily be tailored to your family's needs. Explore live classes or self-paced courses designed to accommodate every student's unique learning style. Elevate your child's education, spark their curiosity, and nurture a lifelong love for learning with Apologia. Discover Apologia today at apologia.com. We are back with Amy. So before the break, we were talking about how those kids who we make them sit down, you have to sit still, you have to be in perfect order. They just can't handle that physically. Most of them can't. And I'm talking boys and girls. I think a lot of times people think, well, it's just the boys who need to get their energy out. Boys are rough and tough. And I'm like, I don't have boys, but I have girls. And I know even with my girls, they need to be moving. They need to be doing something. So let's talk about that for a second. How have you seen that with your kids? As far as, okay, they don't have to sit down and fill in all the blanks. I don't know, maybe some kids enjoy doing worksheets and things like that. But
Yeah.
what are you doing with your kids to help them get that energy out?
Yeah. So, first, I want to say, especially with worksheets, we do use math worksheets for up to third grade.
Mhm.
And one thing that I do is make sure that they're not just doing all the work. If I know that they have completed something, they've got it, I will just line through stuff in their workbook. There is no reason for them to do every single problem.
Yeah,
And so I give them that, option as well. Like, we're just not going to do all the things. It's not necessary.
right.
And like you said, with your daughter in the co-op. So then one thing that I do like to do is allow them to play outside. And we try to take breaks where they just run outside and play. And I want that margin in their day so that they can take a break and they can go outside. We don't start homeschooling until about 10 a.m.
Mhm.
And so they get to do, their seat work, and we're doing the morning time. But then usually there's a break for lunch. And so that, just puts a break in there as well. I just don't think anybody thrives sitting still, trying to think for hours on end. I mean, I think about college classes. The longest college class I had was maybe 2 hours. And I remember fidgeting at the
Yeah.
end of that. And so nobody is really designed to just sit there and focus for hours upon hours. And so don't expect that from your children either. Get out. Going outside is a fantastic way to just break things up.
Yeah.
Do some fun little activities in between. Another thing that I also allow my kids to do, especially during morning time, is I let them bring little toys to the table. I let them draw in their notebooks. I don't see that as them not listening.
Yep.
I think they listen better
Yes.
when they are moving their hands. And sometimes they're bringing food to the table. There's things that we can allow in a homeschooling environment that cannot be allowed in a traditional school environment because it would just be too disruptive.
Yeah.
But in a homeschool environment, it actually helps them to learn if they are doing some other things with their hands, especially kids who are more kinesthetic and they need to be touching
Yeah.
things. And I do also try to keep the lessons very short.
Hmm.
And so anything that I am talking about, if we're doing fine arts, we're going to look at the artist, we're going to talk about the artist, we're going to talk about the painting, we're going to look at it, and then we're going to stop and we're going to back off and do something different. We're changing gears. I do want my children to learn how to sit still and how to be respectful and all of that. You hear a lot about popcorn brain and how the internet has kind of created this world where we're jumping from window to window and thing to thing because everything is just bombarding us all at once. So
Yeah.
I do want to be cognizant of that I want my children to be able to sit through an hour-long sermon at church. I want that for them. But this is where you start, is in the homeschool, and it's little by little, and it's doing short lessons and then moving to another one and giving them opportunities to take a break. And it's all a process. You can't expect your kids to just sit down and be there for 3 hours and
Yeah.
it's all going to be fine. You really have to work up to it. And in the elementary years, they just aren't ready for that. Like you said, they're young, their little brains are not fully formed, and their little arms and legs just fidget. It's what
Right.
they do. And I also had a child who was very, very fidgety. And one thing that we did was get those fidget bands, or I don't know what they're called. They're the bands that go on your chair. And he could actually bounce his little feet
Oh,
on
okay.
that band instead of, because he was bouncing his feet and causing the entire room to bounce. But if we put that band on there and then he could put his feet on there and he could just fidget the whole time.
Yeah.
And that allowed him to be able to sit longer at the table.
Yeah. Oh, I've not heard of that. I'll have to look up one of those bands.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Talk about morning time really quickly and what that looks like for your family. And as you talk about that, I want you to answer the question, where do you fall as far as age level? Because you've got olders and you've got youngers. And so do all of your kids come together, including your high schooler? Do they all come together for morning time? And if so, how do you meet the needs of all of them? Because you don't want to do it too simply so that the older kids are like, this
Right.
is so dumb and boring, but you don't want to be so advanced that the younger kids are like, Mom, I don't understand anything you're saying. So how do you
Right.
balance morning time?
So, morning time, when we started out, we just did a read aloud and Bible. That was all we did. And that was all I was capable of doing at that time because I, had a baby
Yeah.
every other year. I was pregnant a lot. I was sick a lot. And so morning time was very, very simple, just a read aloud, usually from our history curriculum and a Bible lesson. And then they went off to their independent work. Now it's a lot more extensive because I have a little more margin in my own life. And what we do is we come together and everybody comes to the table, high school on down, and we do a Bible lesson together. We have done all kinds of different Bible lessons, from drawing like stick figures to coloring in things to more in depth. But I have everybody sit there. And my philosophy on this is that I teach to the middle and I assign to the edges.
Okay.
So I'm looking for curriculum that is kind of middle of the road. So if I have a lot of high schoolers and just a few elementary. I'm going to teach more to the high school level, but I'm going to assign or I'm going to add to the edges. So I will have coloring pages for the little kids to be able to sit there and color, or they will have some felt that they can be doing on their felt board, or little projects that they can do. Or I've let them bring their cars and their blocks to the table, and they're doing that while I'm engaging the older kids. But I'm really kind of trying to teach to the middle. And so if you have the opposite and you have more elementary school or little kids, you're kind of teaching more to that age, what you can do then is assign to the edges again. So you're giving them books, potentially reports to write, bigger assignments for them to do. But we are coming together because you can learn a lot even from just reiterating the information that they heard 4 years ago when they did this as littler kids. That helps them to retain that information. And so we actually do a curriculum that every 4 years it's going through a history cycle. We start at creation and we end at modern history, and we do this every 4 years. And so they are actually hearing about every 4 years the same lessons. And then I just kind of teach them a little bit higher. So during our morning time, we're doing Bible, history, sometimes fine art, sometimes an art project itself. Some music is in there, sometimes foreign language. And then we almost always end with a read aloud. And we also have geography in there too that goes along with our history. But we always end with a read aloud. And every single one of my children, from little bitty kids all the way up to high school, they like to be read aloud to. I like to be read aloud to. And so they don't mind that, mom's reading from a read aloud to them. It gives us a time to be a family and to learn all the same material. And then the things that they're doing independently, that's where it's more age graded material. That's where the math and the science and the computer classes and all of that belong.
Yeah. It is really amazing how much they really do retain. Recently, I love the book Heidi. It's one of my favorite books ever. And I read it to my girls when my youngest was 6 and my oldest was 11. And I don't know, just a couple weeks ago, I pulled it out and I asked my youngest, she's now 13. I said, can we read Heidi together? She goes, we've already read that. I said, yeah, but you're only 6. She goes, I still remember it. And I was like, oh, I guess in my mind, I thought she wouldn't really remember this. She was so young, but she's like, I totally remember that whole story. And which I was a little bit disappointed about that because I really wanted to read it out loud again to her. She was like, can we read another, Mom? And so.
Yes. We are going back through the Little House on the Prairie books.
Oh, yeah.
And we did that when my 19-year-old was probably 7 or so. And she's already graduated, but she still lives here. Yeah. And I'm reading aloud to my 15 and under crowd. And she just kind of scoots into the room and sits down. And she's like, I want to hear it again, too. She totally remembered it.
Yeah.
But she enjoyed it so much, she wanted to be a part of it again.
Yes.
So, yeah, they really don't mind. And there is so much information that they maybe didn't pick up the last time that they are going to pick up this time.
Yes.
And the younger kids, they also learn more than you realize. So we sometimes think we've got to dumb things down for them.
Right.
Not always. You would be surprised how much they understand.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing how God made the human brain to be able to work and remember things and to be able to grasp concepts that we think, oh, they might not understand this, but God's like, no, I made them to understand. So anyway, we are out of time. We're going to come back on Wednesday and we're going to talk more about the elementary years, kind of, what's important, what's not important in the elementary years, the emotions of elementary school age kids, and how to deal with all that stuff. So we've got lots more to talk about. Amy, tell our audience where they can find out more about you and your ministry.
Sure. You can find me at raisingarrows.net and pretty much anywhere if you Google Raising Arrows. I'm on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. And I also have a podcast.
Yeah. Yep. Your podcast is fantastic. I love your podcast. I recently started listening to it and I've heard other ones, in the past, but more recently I've started listening to more of them and you're so much fun to listen to. You are full of wisdom and so I love having you on the background. People always ask me, they're like, how do you find time to listen to podcasts? And I just do, I do it when I'm doing dishes or getting ready in the morning, taking a shower, whatever. I I find little bits, but I never can listen to an entire podcast all at one time. So I listen in bits and pieces, sometimes 10 minutes at a time, sometimes 15 or 20. And so,
And I do try to keep my podcast to around 20 minutes so that it's not too long. But I hear that I am often people's company for washing dishes.
Yep. And folding laundry too. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much, Amy, for being with me this week. This is such a fun conversation. And thank you guys so much for listening. You are such a blessing to us. If you've not yet seen the movie Schoolhouse Rocked, the Homeschool Revolution, you can stream it for free through our website, schoolhouserocked.com. Share it with your friends. Have your friends over. People still do watch parties, and that's still fun. Invite your friends over, pop some popcorn, and watch the movie. It doesn't cost you a penny. Schoolhouserocked.com. Have a great rest of your day. Stay tuned at the very end to hear what's coming up next on the podcast, and we will see you back here on Wednesday. Bye.
Education is discipleship, and this is something I didn't understand until I was probably 3 years into homeschooling. The Bible teaches us in Luke 6:40 that when a student is fully trained, he will be like his teacher. And as we look around the culture right now, I think it begs the question, who is teaching our children? Who is teaching our children, and what are they teaching our children? And to me, the primary benefit of having my children home with me is I am able to impart my worldview to my children.
There's all kinds of things that you can do that don't look like traditional school.
Right.
That make for a really great homeschooling experience and don't squash that love of learning. It's just, I think what squashes it the most is when we just keep pushing when we see that our kids are done.
Yeah.
And we keep thinking, well, we've got to keep going. We've got an agenda. We've got to keep going with our calendar of events. And you don't take a look around you and realize, hey, they are done. And you need to step back. There is time for this. The elementary years are all about taking that time and doing it slowly.